Good morning, everyone. It is Saturday evening. But I guess to you guys it's Sunday. Anyways, happy weekend to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're just waiting for everybody else to join in for today. I wonder if there's anyone else going to be joining us. Also, we've received comments from yesterday that it's not they weren't sure if there were a share screen that's happening. So please feel free to look for the slides that we are presenting in case that you're not seeing it, in case that you're in your tablet or you're seeing the participants instead of the slides. Just please swipe, or maybe you need to like click the next or click left, I think is the navigation, so that you will be able to see the slides as well. All right, so it's 10:02 right now, or 1:02, I guess, in the Philippine time. So I suppose we should get started. We're very, very excited for today's section for our webinar series because we're going to be talking about the introduction to the US real estate. A lot of virtual assistants actually dive in. I guess that's the usual scenario. And so that is also the reason why there are a lot of issues, because sometimes when they get to dive in with a client, they get to work as a real estate virtual assistant, and then they get a little bit of a trouble because they're not as familiar with what real estate in the US is like. So sometimes the client is not also as equipped into training them as to how is it different for the one that the VA or the virtual assistant has in the Philippines. So there's kind of like a slight difference. And so there goes the culture shock, and sometimes that can be a little bit of a trouble. So hopefully this section for today's webinar will be very, very helpful once you get started as a real estate virtual assistant. As always, please utilize our chat section in case you have any questions. Please feel free to let us know, and we'll definitely try our best to answer them as much as we can. And yeah, let's get started. So for today's webinar section, we are going to be discussing, there's my slides. We're going to be discussing a couple of things. So we're going to define what real estate is in the US and what's the current real estate trends that we have right now, and how is it different for the realtors or the real estate agent that we have in different states, I guess, and in the Philippines, and what are the different types of real estate in the real estate market, the types of representation that you can also anticipate. And we're going to go look into a little bit of like what is the usual process per se of the real estate transactions that we have. We're not going to go so much in depth. We don't want to kind of like shock you or overwhelm you with what's going to happen. But we definitely want to introduce you of how it is different or how it is new. And if there is anything that is similar, at least we can get a little bit more familiarized of what we're dealing with. All right, so let's get started. What is real estate? And by definition, real estate is a piece of land plus any natural or man-made improvements attached or have been added, including natural attachments, including trees or mineral deposits, and etc. And then artificial improvements, including buildings, sidewalks, and fences. Now, in some cases, there are some agents that deal with just land. So we're going to tackle a little bit about that later. So it can be a vacant lot or it can be a house. That can be real estate, just the same thing. But so like it depends on the agent, on what kind of client you're going to have in the future. And that will allow you to also know like which niche they're going to focus on the market per se. Common real estate trends right now in the US. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of what they currently have right now in the market. The average sales price of a house right now in the market in the US in the whole, like across the nation, an average of the states, we currently have an average sales price of 375. It's actually a little bit higher compared to the past couple of years. There's been a recent increase in case of home values due to the pandemic, which is amazing because when the pandemic started, we actually expected that it's going to go in a little bit of a slump, but apparently it went well. So that's really, really good. We had the good increase in terms of house values, and that really came to be a good real estate sellers market for right now. The average American lives in their home for 7 to 8 years before moving. It actually also increased too, perhaps because of the pandemic as well. They get to stay more at home. From the past, maybe around like, yeah, before the pandemic, around 2018 to 2019, the average kind of goes from 5 to 7, but right now we've seen a longer stay in terms of the usual American family or an American homeowner. They tend to stay longer, which allows us to start marketing instead of 5 years, but like 7 years of length of residence. And then they tend to move 8 years to 10. So they kind of extend that way. 88% of home buyers purchased through a real estate agent, and 51% of them found their agent through online. That is actually very true. There is a slight increase of percentage of buyers that are buying with a real estate agent now, which I think is very good because they get to make informed decisions as well. And they also get to be, we also get to find out, since they're finding their agents online, they find that their agents are more accessible. So I guess that's also good. In terms of virtual assistants and support teams, and for us, for example, we're helping out in business development, this is also a very good sign because this means that for businesses that are hiring virtual assistants like you guys, that means that we have an increased demand for you as well. Because if they're finding their agents online, then that means the competition in terms of digital marketing and being omnipresent is also very, very high. So the competition kind of shifts, but it also goes very, very strict when it comes to who goes first. Average agent is 54-year-old white female who had been in the business for 8 years. That is also very true. Now, when it comes to talking about a little bit on the demographics of the agents, usually you will see online that there are a lot of agents that are starting up. We are talking about millennials that are dipping out their feet in the water and trying to be a real estate agent. And the thing about them is that they don't have that kind of resilience yet. The thing about real estate is that it's not as easy as everybody thinks. You have to have resilience. You have to have a strategy. So sometimes in terms of those kinds of demographics, most of the millennials, I'm not dishing on the generation, but like most of the younger agents kind of tend to fail on the first year of being a real estate agent. And so if your client, for example, is at the beginning of their career as a real estate agent, our recommendations would be to, of course, make sure that they have the right strategy, guide them into talking to the right people, surround themselves with the right people, so that you also get to make sure that your client or the person that you're also working with get to also have a prolonged career in real estate. Otherwise, it will not be a win-win situation. It's not as bad, but it's more of like strategizing of what's going to happen next so that you can also have the best out of the scenario. Okay. Lastly, the median gross income for agents is $43,000. That is actually an increase, but it's still not too much. What we're pointing out in here is that by this average, we want to make sure that if we are working with an agent, and as for you guys as a virtual assistant, is to make sure that you are also knowledgeable about what's happening in the market right now. I suppose the common assumption with being on with hiring and placing virtual assistants is that they get to be dependent on what the client says, and then okay, that's what they're going to do. the best case scenario will be that you will be empowered with these webinars and trainings and the resources that we're providing you, so that you can also give them advice to like, oh, this is the things that you can do, and these are the things that you can also introduce to your business so that they can make wiser decisions. And you can also really help them build up their career so that you as a virtual assistant can also grow with them. So really empower yourself about what you should know, how you can get more involved. And in that way, together with your client, you can also build more success. That's the idea, build more success. All right. So apart from the trends and what's currently happening with the real estate market, what exactly is it that we're dealing? So understanding the real estate profession, who is it exactly that we are working with? Real estate agents are actually independent contractors. When we say this, it means that they are not paid by the hour. So they don't go into an office to get paid by the hour, they clock in, they clock out. That's not actually the case. Real estate agents are independent contractors per se. They hand their license to a firm that they get to represent. So most likely you have heard these firms or brokerages like Keller Williams, Coldwell Banker, Remax, Century 21, Better Homes and Garden, and EXP Realty. These are brokerage, like big brokerages that they get to hang their licenses with so that they can get more connections, which is very, very important to being an agent. And also so that they can get more resources to help them into building up their real estate career. The thing about agents is, like I mentioned, you have to be wise in terms of your decision making. If you are a real estate agent, you get to decide about what to do with your business. Nobody's going to tell you and sit down with you like, okay, this is what you're going to do. This is the person that you're going to talk to. Real estate agents, they're the CEO of their own thing. So if they are a solo agent, basically everything that they're going to do, they're going to have to decide on their own. That's why it's very important that it's either they work with a team or they get a very, very good coach, because at least with that, they get to be guided as to, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to find people to sell houses. This is how we're going to introduce our buyers to the sellers, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very important that you also get to know who is the agent you're working with, who are they also talking to, and what are the things that they would need to succeed. Okay. Some agents work under a team, like we've mentioned. Some are independent, so some are solo agents, they're on their own, and work entirely for themselves. I'm not going to say that you don't want to work with solo agents. That's also okay. It means that they are more empowered to make the decisions to do what they want. So for example, if you have a very creative agent working with you and they are very strategic in making decisions, that's also good, because sometimes working with a team, that would also mean that they may not have all the shots. Like for example, I like that tool, let's buy that. But they're working with a team, sometimes that's not at all their decision to make. So it depends. It's a buy and a balance as to who you want to work with and how knowledgeable you are in the market as well. Just a short commercial. Please let us know if you have any questions about those. And if you have any comments or experience I also want to share with the group, that's also okay. Please use the chat section and would love to read your comments and hear from you as well. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between a realtor and a real estate agent. So sometimes they go synonymous, right? You read an article, they talk about a realtor, they talk about a real estate agent, they talk about a real estate professional, etc. What exactly is the difference between a realtor and a real estate agent? There is actually an association that we call in the US that is National Association of Realtors. Or NAR. Yeah, you can call them NAR. You can actually look them up. They have a very good website in terms of real estate statistics and real estate updates and real estate market. NAR is a very good source for that. They have their own association, and if you're included in that association, then you get to be called as a realtor. But as you may notice on our slide, it says there, must uphold the standards of the association, the association and code of ethics. So they have their own, um, yeah, they have their own code of ethics. It's a little bit different. There is actually a growing GIF that goes and says, are you a real estate agent? And then the realtor goes says, no, I'm a realtor. It's something different, but they can't really tell for sure. But that is the main difference between the two. If you're a member of the National Association of Realtors or NAR, then you can be called as a realtor. If you're not, then basically you're just a licensed real estate agent. Some states actually require their real estate agents to first be realtors before they can operate in the real estate market. Some state it's okay if they're not a realtor, they can still represent buying or selling houses. So it depends on which state you can have your client with. That's also another thing, I suppose. Not all the things that we're going to be introducing with you is going to be applicable all the time. I guess that's very important to bear in mind. Although we want to try to provide you general information about the real estate market, some of them may be tweaked when you get to go to a different state. So just be very, very open to those kinds of adjustments. Do your research. If you have any questions, feel free to ask us. Okay, apart from the real estate agent that we get to work with, what are the actual types of real estate that we are working with? So in the US, we have different kinds of or types of real estate. Again, this is where it also applies, where it may be different from each state. But most commonly, we have single family homes. These are, I guess in the Philippines, that's what you guys have as single detached. So you have a lot and a house on it, like a whole lot, sometimes a yard. Fascinating. If you think that big houses are on a different type of real estate, that is still a single family home. So if that's just a single dwelling, it's a single family home. Even though sometimes they have a lake on it, it would still be a single family home. But yeah, that's just it. It's very consistent. Condominiums or multiple dwellings. Some states they have condos and apartments all together. Sometimes they also have condos and townhomes in just one category. It depends on the state. Townhomes, these are single family homes that are attached together. So I guess in the Philippines, that's also called townhomes. I'm not sure, but they're like put together in a property. You can see them, they're put together. And then you also have your duplex. They look like single family homes, but they're for two dwelling units. So you may notice sometimes they have two gates, two gates, and then that basically is a duplex. And then you also have your commercial lots or your commercial real estate. These are business associated. So they have a storefront, they have a good spot for parking, etc. And then you also have your lot and vacant lots. Aside from these that we have listed, it is also possible that you have your rentals as well. Some MLS or some state, they have a different category when it comes to rentals. Some of them, they just have it all at the same, and then it kind of just differs on how you represent the client of your agents. So that's kind of like it. In terms of agents operating with these kinds of or types of real estate, some agents tend to focus more on residential. So they don't deal particularly on commercial real estate. Some of them just deal with commercial real estate and so on and so forth. So again, it's very important you get to ask your agent as to what particularly they work with. Some of them don't like lots and vacant lots. Some of them also don't like representing tenants. So that's kind of like a thing. Just try to ask them before you go ahead and operate with them too, so that you can get more idea of what exactly it is that they operate with.